Hi everyone, it's Kirstie, and next year I'll be moving to Orlando, Florida to work and live in Walt Disney World under the Cultural Representative Programme, and I'll be working in the UK Pavilion in the food and beverage department, and I am so excited! In today's video, I'll be talking to you about my interview with Disney at their base in Hammersmith, and how the interview was, what my experience was like, and general tips to help you with your interview as well. So I found out that I'd got through to stage 2 about 3 or 4 weeks after my first interview with YummyJobs. So I'd watched loads of videos about people who went on the programme last year, and they all found out that they'd got through to stage 2 quite soon after their interview with Yummy. So everyone who had interviewed with Yummy was stalking their social media because they were posting to Instagram and just general sort of social activity about the fact that they were hosting the interviews for the CRP. And we'd hoped that we would hear a bit sooner, but it actually took about 3 to 4 weeks to hear back before we found out that we got to the stage 2. Finding out that you get to stage 2 is so exciting because so many people get interviewed by YummyJobs. I think it's a good few hundred or 1,000 or so. So to get through to stage 2 to meet with Disney is mind-boggling. So the process for this is you get an interview saying congratulations, you are moving forward to apply to Disney. So I was quite confused because I thought it basically meant that you're straight through to the Disney interview, and you kind of are, but you have to reapply for the same job via a private link that YummyJobs send you, and apply for the same job on the Disney website via your private link. And on this form, you're going to say that you are being represented by YummyJobs, who are your country's ambassador, and then you will get sent the application form to fill in. You re-upload the same documents that you sent to YummyJobs, and then you just wait to hear back. I think it was a day or two that I heard back, and no, it wasn't. It was a few weeks later actually that we heard back with dates for the interview in Hammersmith. So I knew that the days going into this would be towards either the end of March or the start of April, and before I had even applied for this job, I'd already booked a holiday to Egypt with my mum for her birthday. So I desperately hoped it would be the end of March for the interview with Disney. It wasn't. So when you hear from Disney about interview days, there were 4 days available. There was the last week in March, the beginning of the last week in March, not the end of the last week in March, and a few days into the first week of April. I left for my holiday at the start of April, so I had a dilemma about what I was going to do. Getting to stage 2 was hard and something I didn't even think was possible for me. So after thinking long and hard about what to do, I contacted Disney and asked if there's any way I could have an interview on a separate day, and they said no, as I thought they would. And the reason for this is just to make it fair for everyone, because so many people have reasons why they can't attend and they want to see that you're making an effort. So I spoke to my mum, we rearranged our holiday, which cost me a lot of money, but I have no regrets. So we just flew out 2 days later instead. Well, actually my mum left on the original day. I flew out 2 days later and joined her in Egypt. And instead I dropped her off at the airport at 2 a.m. and went down to London to stay and get ready for my interview. So I packed my bag. This time it was a backpack because I would be going straight from my interview to the airport. So in my backpack I had my suits, I had things to see me through, like toiletries and things like for my plane to Egypt. And I also had my CV, my license, my passport, and basically they will send you a list of things to bring with you to your Disney interview. So I had all of those items with me and headed down to London and stayed in Hammersmith. So when I got to Central, I jumped on the tube and stayed in the Premier Inn in Hammersmith. So if you do what I did and choose to stay in the Premier Inn, the Premier Inn, it's basically a 5-minute walk from the station in Hammersmith to the Premier Inn, and you actually walk past the Disney Hammersmith office on your way to the Premier Inn. So when I arrived in Hammersmith, I was walking past and I saw the big Disney logo inside in the office, and it hit home that I was about to have my interview the day after. So once again, I went into my Purple Palace room for the night in the Premier Inn. This time though, I didn't rest as much as I had for my YummyJobs interview. I had notes on my phone, I did loads of research, I did loads of mock questions with myself in the mirror. But once again, I had a shower and decided that enough was enough, and I didn't want to stress out too much and over prepare, because I didn't want to feel like all of my answers were too rehearsed, and I didn't want to feel overwhelmed by the fact that I had my interview tomorrow, the day after, and I was staring at my phone all night. So I went to bed and decided just to try and have an early night. Once again, I woke up really early. There was an induction in the morning at 9 a.m. that you had to be there for, but they arrived getting there at 8:30. So I think I set my alarm for about 7 a.m, woke up, had a nice slow morning, got ready, and because it was so close to the Hammersmith office, I still got there really early. But you check in to the Disney offices and you head over to the front desk where you tell them your name and they give you a lanyard. And this lanyard, I will insert a picture of the lanyard here, has basically your name on it and what you're there for, and you get to keep the Disney lanyard as well, which is very exciting. So you just sit there and you wait, and behind you there's this diamond Mickey, and it just feels so overwhelming and magical that you are in the Disney office. There's cast members coming in and out, and this magical tunnel where all the cast members go, and I got there quite early. I think I got there at about 8:15, because I didn't want to get there at 8:30 and then be late. And I was just talking to some of the other people who were applying, who had the interview as well, and we were just saying how nervous we were. And we took it in turns, taking pictures of each other with the Mickey. So after about half an hour or so, 8:45, Yvette and another member of the Disney recruiting team came out and introduced themselves to us. Yvette is the head of recruiting for the cultural programs. So we were escorted into the cinema room, which is very exciting because I know that previous years didn't manage to go in the space, but we went into the cinema room, got on one of the comfy chairs, and we were shown a video of how amazing the program was. And I remember in that moment sitting in my chair trying not to cry, because I knew that I wanted this. I knew that I wanted it so much, and that I didn't want to put too much pressure on myself, but I knew how much I wanted this. It's very overwhelming sitting there and seeing what your life could be like and wanting it so badly. But anyway, in this video is a run through of what the program is, what's available to you when you're on the course. So there's Harvard programs, there's learning, there's trips, there's all sorts of things that you can do while you are employed by Disney on one of these programs. And I had so many emotions rush through my body, and I just knew that I would do whatever it took to try and get here. So after about an hour or so being in the cinema, it was time for us to leave until our slots. While we were in the cinema though, Yvette did have some questions for us where you could have a chance to win some little trinket items. So she asked questions like, can you name all of the different pavilions in Epcot? What does Epcot stand for? And just fun little trivia questions like that. And if you did win, you would get a keychain or like a little souvenir mug like that, and that was really fun too. So after about an hour of the video and the questions and Yvette explaining how amazing the course is, everyone who wasn't having an interview in the morning had to leave. Unfortunately for me, when I applied for my interview time slot, the early morning slots had already been taken. So when it was time to choose my time for the interview, I had to choose a 4:30 time slot because that was all that was left on the day that I had to do. Bear in mind, I had to do the first day available because I had a plane to catch. Obviously, if you want a certain time, then you have more flexibility because there are about 4 dates in total that you could choose to have your interview. But I needed that one day. So my interview was at 4:30, which is my time slot, and they give you about an hour of when your interview can be in that time, and again ask you to arrive back at the Hammersmith headquarters about half an hour before your interview time slot. So I walked back to my Premier Inn hotel. Some other people went out for drinks, but once again, I knew that I would get overwhelmed if I left, and I didn't want to be all hot and sweaty. And I wanted time just to go over my CV and my letter and what I was going to say. So I headed back to the Premier Inn, again, 5 minutes walk away, and got a nice coffee and just sat down and went through my application. It's funny because there are a few other people who were also there in suits, which now putting 2 and 2 together, I know that they were also doing the program because they left when I left and we headed back to Disney together. But at the time, I just thought it was funny how we were all wearing suits and all my age and all looking at paperwork. But yeah, I read some of my book. I had my Kindle with me, read some book, I drank my drink, tried to just calm my nerves and tried not to put too much pressure on myself because although that I knew that I wanted this job, I didn't want to feel like I'd be mad at myself if I didn't get it. So once again, at about 4 o'clock, I headed back to the interview space. When I left the first time, I had to give back my lanyard. So I once again collected my lanyard from the front desk, and this time we were escorted back upstairs, past the cinema and into the interview space. This is where we saw the giant Sully from Monsters Inc. and a few other amazing parts of the offices. I'll insert some pictures here so you can see. And it was so beautiful. As far as an office goes, it was so homey and quaint and Disney and just what you'd expect from the Disney offices. So this is where the longest part of the day took place. So when I arrived, I was told that the interviews were running really far behind. So we were taken upstairs to a larger office space where there were tables pushed together in like a circle shape and chairs around them. So we all sat at these chairs around the table, and the representation person from YummyJobs was there, again to just oversee the whole process. And I imagine to liaise with Disney and just give input onto all of us and discuss with them who they would choose for the program. So again, you want to make sure that when you are waiting for your interview that you are engaging but not being too engaging, trying to just be yourself and show your personality, and be aware that although it isn't an interview where you are right now, you are being monitored. So my interview was at 4:30, and while I was still waiting for my interview, there were people who were still waiting for their time slot from 2:30 for their interview. So at that point I knew it would be a long wait, and we all bucketed in at the table and just had a chat about ourselves and our lives and just general sort of stuff. You want to make sure to just be yourself again, not worry too much about what you're saying, but make sure of how you come across while you are there. I think I waited about 2.5 to 3.5 hours in total for my interview. My interview was at around 6:30 because I knew I had to get a train to the airport so I could go and meet my mum in Egypt. So after, when it's kind of your time for the interview, you leave the office space and join a queue of chairs outside. So I joined the queue of chairs, and you all shuffle up one at a time as one person goes in for their interview. So there was Yvette and Steve who were hosting the interviews this time. As I mentioned, Yvette is head of recruiting and Steve is also her main colleague in this aspect. And when it was my time, you could have either of them interview you. It's just luck and who you get. But when it was my turn for my interview, Yvette called me through and off I went. So both interviews do happen in the same room. Steve will interview one person and Yvette another, but you're at opposite ends of the room, so you can't hear each other. You're mildly aware that there's someone else in the room, but it's not distracting, you can't hear each other, and you have to just shut it off. You can't be worried about the fact that someone else is there, because you need to show this person, this is your one chance to show them why you. Out of all the people they're gonna see, why you. So my interview takes place and Yvette apologises for my wait and says ahead that it's going to be quite rushed, just because there was a very big delay and there were still about 10 people after me waiting for interviews. And obviously they wanted to go home, they were getting tired, and I understood completely. So this was a very different interview to my YummyJobs interview. So whereas Yummy was very relaxed and very chill, this was more of a sit-down interview with a handshake and hello and a general more question and answer situation. So I sat down and the first question was, tell me about you. And it's scary to know where to start, because what do you say? So I just started with, hi, my name is Kirstie and I'm from Manchester. And I spoke about where I'm from and me, and tried to add as much to that as possible, because I didn't know how many questions I would get. I didn't know how long I had, especially since I knew it would be a shorter interview. And then from there, it was a bit more of a structured interview. So why Disney? What will you bring? And then towards the end of my interview, they asked if I had any questions. And I asked about life outside of Disney, and unfortunately she did say there wasn't enough time to answer those questions, but that she hoped that she would see me around Flamingo Crossings and we can talk more in depth there. So I left my interview feeling quite deflated, because I wasn't sure how it went. In my mind, I had a rush interview and I was really scared that I couldn't say everything that I wanted to say. I had answers prepared loosely for what I wanted to say, and I wanted to say all of these things, and I was scared that I hadn't said it all. And there I was, trying not to cry after my interview, wanting so desperately for it to have gone well, knowing that I had a plane to catch the following morning at 6 a.m. And I left the offices, and it was out of my hands. As you do leave the office, there is a chance again to have a little look at the art around you. So again, I'll insert a few more pictures of the beautiful things that I saw while I was there. You get to keep your lanyard, but they do take the place card inside with your information on it, just for security reasons. And then I literally just left and got on the train to the airport, where I stayed the night before flying out to Egypt at 6 a.m. So that was my experience with the interview. I was told during my interview that it would be between 2 and 4 weeks I would hear back as to whether or not I was successful or not. It was explained that there were 3 different possibilities. You would either be waitlisted, accepted, or rejected. So 2 weeks went by and I hadn't heard, 4 weeks went by and I hadn't heard. When it got to the 2-month mark, I was quite worried, because I know that if you don't accept an offer within 7 days, if it goes into your spam folder, or if you don't accept a waitlist offer within 7 days, you are instantly removed from the whole process and you have to start again. So I was terrified that had happened. So I contacted Disney with my candidate number and I got an email back from Yvette apologising that she didn't have the budget yet for the year after, 2025, and that they'll be in touch soon. Another few days pass by and everyone in my group chat gets a mass email with an apology from Disney, and then 1 week later I got an offer email to work at Disney starting in April 2025 through to 2026. And I experienced all the emotions. I went from fear that I'd done badly to believing that I hadn't got the job, because it had been so long, especially because people last year found out within a matter of weeks and it had been about 3 months at this point, and I was so overwhelmed. I think I was in absolute shock, and I found out on my own because my boyfriend was at work and I was in such disbelief, and the array of overwhelm I felt in that moment was insane. And a few weeks have gone by now and I'm so unbelievably happy and excited and overwhelmed and grateful, and I just cannot put into words how this is going to change my life. So don't be disheartened. I know people who got put on wait lists and still haven't heard. People who got an offer earlier than I did who didn't make it known in the group chat, just so that people who hadn't heard didn't feel bad. So if you haven't heard by, I think it is August, either way, then you won't be taken through and you have to reapply for the following year. So during my wave of acceptances, it was April start date, and then a week later it was a May start date, and the week after it was a June, July and August start date. So basically anywhere from your interview until 3 or 4 months after, people can be accepted. If you are put on a wait list, don't be disheartened, because people can drop out and people can change plans and people can just say no. So I know it is scary, but if you are waiting and you haven't heard, just because you haven't got a wait list, it doesn't mean you are not going to get through. Again, this is the first time I've applied, my first time with YummyJobs, my first time with Disney, and I got through. And I can't believe it. I cannot believe that me from Manchester, who's never been to Disney World before, has got this job, and I am beyond grateful. So don't feel disheartened, don't feel discouraged. I am your hype girl. If I can do this and you can do this, don't lose hope if you're still waiting to hear. But yeah, that was my experience with Disney themselves interviewing. And I will talk to you in my next video about the process of accepting the job and what happens next. I hope you have an amazing day, and I hope that you follow along on this journey, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.